Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. And, well, you know the drill. If you've listened to this podcast enough, I want to have our guests introduce themselves and spell their names. I still feel it's like one of these old 1950s, 60s shows. Guest?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Drew Furtado, and it's Drewfurtado.
Okay. We assume it's for Andrew, Drew?
Okay. Yeah, it's short for Andrew. But
yeah.
The only one who calls me Andrew is my mom, or my legal documents.
Oh, when she's mad at you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. My mother calls me, well, she has the O on it to be Portuguese, Ronaldo. And here I am still, fearing when I hear that. But, wow, you have a long and storied career for someone so young. That's my assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as young as you think. I'm close to 40 years old, and
well, compared to me, that's that's young.
I primarily am a filmmaker and photographer, and I've been doing that since high school. When I graduated Durfee in 2004 from the Fred TV, the Fall River Educational Television Department. And then after that, I started a long career of filmmaking, TV broadcasting, teaching. It's crazy to see how far I've come since those days at Fred TV, which is remarkable and exciting.
Well, I mean, that was another thing, too. Fall River really grabbed the bull by the horns when it came to communications, and they really set up a little dynasty at Durfee. And then obviously the spillover into BCC was important. And I'm trying to think of Continental Cable, was it at one time?
Oh, yeah.
There were just so many manifestations of what it ended up as Xfinity.
Yeah, and so that station you're talking about was actually my first break in the industry. So I graduated 2004, and then I wanted to work in TV, and I started studying at New England Tech in Rhode Island. I sent an email or a call to Jim Phillips at the local Fall River, New Bedford cable news station. I was like, hey, I'm looking for an internship.
And Jim Phillips is still in the business.
I know, it's amazing. He was extraordinary.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I'd be here today. And I said, I'm looking for an internship. Do you take these kind of things? I didn't know how it all worked. And he's like, you're the first person to call for an internship in quite a bit of time. Why don't you come in, watch the show? And I came in to watch the production and the live broadcast, and then there was like a car accident outside. And they were like scrambling, and they're like, we need to film this. They knocked out the power to the city. And it was like literally around the corner. And everyone was busy editing and shooting. And I said, I know how to shoot. And he's like, do you? And like everyone just stopped for a second and looked at me, and I was like, yeah, I know how to shoot. And so he shuttled me through in the back room, gave me this camera. He's like, you know how to use this?
Was it a tube camera still?
It was a DVC Pro cassette camera. And I remember looking at it being like, oh my God, I have no idea how this thing works. But my answer was like, yeah, of course I know how to use this. And then he gave me the camera. I came out, I shot, some stuff, came back, and then, they put it together and watched the broadcast. And then he's like, hey, I know you called about an internship, but do you want a job? And that was it. And
wow, so right place, right time.
Yeah, it was wild. And so I started shooting news with Jim and Phil Sabatino and Pamela Martin and Erica Ritchie and
Oh,
it just felt like
yeah, bringing back. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really good time. And then shortly after that, I got hired at Channel 10.
RTP guys as well over there.
Briefly.
Radio, television, Portugal. RTP or Radio Televisão Portugal. Yeah. I see Manny every once in a while, and I see Flo's posts. Floriano Cabral on. He's always been a funny guy.
Yeah.
His nickname was Terremoto, earthquake. But it was such a great crew of people. You know, they did. And that's where I spent a lot of my time when I was doing advertising and had my own agency.
Yeah.
But from there, so you started shooting news basically, and probably a slice of life.
Anything and
segments.
everything. Yeah. So, when New Bedford, Fall River, they were a hyper local news broadcast. So everything that we were producing was super hyper local. We'd be going to the fairs, the festivals, and then the hard news like the fires, and I'll never forget like the first time I got introduced to New Bedford, Massachusetts on like a large national scale there was a hate crime that took place at a gay bar, Puzzles.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it was horrific.
I know the victim.
And, we were there, we covered it all, and we did that whole story, and it really opened up my eyes to this like monster world of communication. I started seeing people show up from Boston and CNN, and I was just like, I just couldn't get over with this image of these large TV trucks and satellite dishes, and it's just that sense of adrenaline, like, you're creating something that people need to know about. It was just really an eye-opening experience for me, and that I think that really lit a bug for me to like really do more of this, and not that story, but just the atmosphere.
Yeah, if it bleeds, it leads, and then you're a witness to. It's not just an event; it becomes history, in many cases, and you're like the fly on the wall. And I've spoken to photojournalists who, one of their night terrors is, should I put the camera down and done something?
Yeah, we've had and there was moments in my career that were very much like that, and there's one in particular incident where I was working at Channel 10 News, and I was a cruiser. So for those who don't know what cruisers do, you're waiting for something to happen. You typically have a scanner on, and you're like just kind of prowling the streets. Sometimes you'll get a call from the news station, say, hey, XYZ is happening. And I heard about a shooting that had happened in Lincoln, where a man got shot in the head, and I was around the corner, and I was like in Pawtucket. I got there before the ambulances got there. It was crazy. And like I remember thinking like, do I film this? Do I help this guy? And then I heard the sirens, so I was like, I'm gonna. And then I didn't know if it was safe at that time. Like is the gunman still in the area?
Shooter,
right. So I was just like, I'm gonna just sit in my car and wait for the police to come here. But yeah, it's like one of those moments where you're like, yeah, what do I do? Like you're trained to not interfere. Like you're a fly on the wall. You don't want to impact a scene or story. You don't want to become the story yourself.
Right.
But in the same token, there's that human element of it.
Well, January 6th, which is obviously still fresh in a lot of people's minds, it just keeps coming back like a scab that keeps falling off and starting all over again. Where the media was actually attacked. Yeah. Which is almost unprecedented. And so there's a lot to that business for sure. Now, you transitioned out of news.
Yeah. So, so from New Bedford Cable, I worked at Channel 10, and then there's a variety of layoffs that happened because the economy. I don't know if you remember the 2006 housing bubble. Well, it turns out people aren't buying cars, and if people aren't buying cars, then people aren't advertising. If they're not advertising, TV stations have to lay people off. Yeah. So I lost my job at Channel 10. I got hired in Boston at a Fox 25, and then a year later I got laid off, and then I was unemployed. The economy bounced back. I got hired back from Channel 10. Went to Fox again, and then I was at Fox, and then it was 2012 when the Boston bombing happened, and we were there for that. We were at the finish line, and it was just pure mayhem. And I don't think we fully got to recover from that event. So after the Boston bombing, it was the shooting in Watertown. It was the ghost town. Boston's on lockdown. It was the shooting in Cambridge. It was just like one thing after another. And then the Whitey Bulger was extradited to Boston, and then Aaron Hernandez murder. And it was just like, we just never got a chance to stop. And it was just our days were just everyone's worst day, so it just started to weigh on me. And this opportunity opened up at Fairhaven Public Schools. They were looking for someone to rebuild their media arts program. And I had a strong affinity in relationship to Fred TV, and I wanted to be able to be that person to kind of give back to students and really kind of create something a little bit more revolutionary, a little bit more innovative than Fred TV. And so I jumped at that opportunity, and I did that for about 10 years. And that was a wholly rewarding experience. And I really enjoyed that I could still tell stories and create things, but don't have to worry about the blood, the guts, the hard news elements of it. And being able to give high school kids that voice and empower them to tell a story through film and through video really was rewarding for me.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I mean, I've got that 40 years in advertising. My brain's spinning with all these different faces are popping up, and absolutely amazing the amount of news and the people that are involved, and the economies, all those things swirling around. And the other thing too is like having lived on the other side of the river for most of my life, and only being on the Fairhaven side for the last 8 years or so, it's a whole nother world. And Fairhaven High, the only thing I knew about it is, I graduated from Dartmouth High, and in 1971, the Thanksgiving Day game, the score was 35-0. Never got to the line of scrimmage. I think all those touchdowns were scored within the first quarter. Again, never to the line of scrimmage. It was like a bloodbath, so much that Carlton Lynch, the legendary Carlton Lynch, said, anybody scores a touchdown from this point, you're off the team. I don't care, right? We can't do this. But anyway, that's all I knew about Fairhaven High. And then I heard from several artists who went to school there, and I was like, wow, this is not just the first individual that told me that they had a fantastic arts program. And then I started hearing about film, and you in film. So that it seems kind of odd, because for a school that decided that they want to embrace the arts that way is really kind of refreshing when you consider the other programs in other schools.
Yeah. When I started, I had, my mission was clear. Mm-hmm. I wanted to build something that was different. Mm-hmm. I had a good experience at Fred TV, but I felt like it could have been so much better and so much bigger, and there could have been so many more opportunities for students. So for me, it was like I wanted to prove that high school kids are capable of amazing things. This was what I was set off to do. And yeah, man, we had like 1,000. In 10 years, I've had over 1,000 students. Many students have won national student Emmy Awards. They've won 30-something New England Emmy Awards. My students are now like leading film festivals in Bedford, and
let's bring up a couple.
Traveling to the Azores to produce other stories. It's just like it's crazy to think about.
Well, I mean, I've had Alyssa Botello, who was one of your latest, greatest, so to speak.
Yeah, she's one of many.
Yeah, one of many. Yeah. But again, as when I was an instructor, and you have those moments in the classroom. I mean, there's this. It's like a rubber band snap behind somebody's eyes. You just all of a sudden they get it, and it's this weird connective thing that you have, student and teacher, and then that's when you know that you have a shot at being immortal, because whatever you did to light up that student is going to last all of their lifetime, and then maybe that is going to get passed on, and a little bit of you goes along with it.
It's crazy to think about.
It is.
It's so crazy to think about, because like teaching, when I started, you're not going to impact every single student. Not every student's going to become a filmmaker, and not every student's going to want to work in TV, and not every student's going to want to.
Some thought of, hey, this is going to be an easy 3 credits, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, which is great, right? And for me to be that person,
Mm-hmm.
but then to see these people whose lives have completely changed because of your class is just, it's still mind blowing to me. It's still like a wow, like. It's impressive.
Well,
and humbling.
Oh yeah, I mean, to steal a line from Roots, behold the only thing greater than myself. You've got students who have totally eclipsed you, right? I mean,
Oh,
they
yeah. Oh yeah. It's we recently competed in the Providence 48-hour film festival this past weekend, where you have 48 hours to write, shoot, edit a film, and among those 40 teams that competed, it was one of my students who, as a sophomore, was doing things that were so far beyond anything I'm capable of. So now I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, now I have to compete against this kid. You know what I mean? And I'm going to lose to him, right? That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm 100% going to lose to this kid, and well-deservedly. And he's amazing, and his work is outstanding. And there's just like, it's just like, I never set off to be a teacher. That was never in my DNA. I didn't go to school for teaching, but it was completely rewarding. And and I left about a year ago to help innovate and kind of tell the story of the New Bedford Whaling Museum, because I felt like it was at the museum wasn't really doing a good job.
It's
of
not just your 4th grade field trip, and you never ever have to go back.
Right. So there was an opportunity to be part of something bigger, and I really do enjoy being that person to build something. I like being that phoenix. Like when something comes in and it's dead, and you come in and make it better. When I started teaching, I had 20 kids. The program was on its deathbed, and then when I left, the class was filled. I had 120 kids per year. So it was like exciting to do that. And I saw this opportunity to kind of tell stories about New Bedford in a way that where it wasn't really being told. So I had to jump at that opportunity.
And I would probably say you were, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, not because I'm going to say something stupid, or hopefully I don't say something stupid, but it was almost like, you were like one of the first, I think, that saw the possibility of telling the stories of New Bedford in a more concise way. For the longest time, and almost up until, when you can say recently, I'd say recently would be like within 10 years. Everybody was so negative on the city, I had the opportunity to work for the Office of Historic Preservation with Tony Souza, who was a legend in his own time. And learned a lot about the city. And there's just so many stories. I mean, you'll never run out of material.
No, and I think like the thing that really motivates me today as a filmmaker is this idea that you don't necessarily need the TV stations in the world to tell your story. I mean, they're not coming here, right? Like Boston isn't coming to New Bedford to
Chronicle's been here a lot lately.
They have
Channel 5,
but. Typically they're not coming.
Right.
And Providence Station's same. So it's like we're in this like weird state where if we're not telling our stories, who will, right? We can't wait for people to tell our stories, so we have to do it ourselves. And in a way, and we have these internet tools that allow us to tell our story to millions of people very easily. So I'm encouraged to be able to like produce some good stuff about the city. And my hope is that if people see our stuff, they come to the city, they have dinner, they have lunch in the city, maybe they stay at one of the local hotels, visit a store, and then make it an experience that they never thought possible. So, on one hand, I miss teaching to make those connections, but I feel like I can be part of a bigger success story. So, I had to jump on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. You just have to go with where you feel you can be the most useful, and also the hierarchy of needs. You want to be fulfilled. And so how because I mean, up until this point in the conversation, your life has been kind of like Forrest Gump, right place, right time, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How did you get to the Whaling Museum?
Yeah, so I do feel like my career has been a series of really good timing.
Serendipitous. Yeah.
Serendipitous. You
Yeah.
know, when I look back at Channel 10, like I heard that someone left, so I just like was pestering the person, and they're like, "We're looking to hire someone." I was like, you should definitely hire me." So like, and even at Fairhaven, it was the right place, the right time, and the Whaling Museum had an opening for a position. I had applied, but then they like kind of closed the position a little bit, and then they reposted it, kind of trying to reorganize how the position was going to work and stuff. And at the same time, the Whaling Museum set forth a strategic plan that really, when I started looking at it, is like really changing a way how the museum is seen and how the mission of the museum and what the museum was trying to do. And there was a quite a bit of growth. You know, they're building a team, and I just felt like it was just a really great time to be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, they're about as tight as I can ever remember. I don't know how many directors they had between James Russell, which is a whole story in itself, and Amanda. But the team that is there now, and I'm blanking out on Amanda's last name.
It's McMullen.
McMullen, that's right. So Amanda, you've got Naomi Slip, you have Imelda Laxton, you've got Mike Lapides. I mean, and then you had the people that left. You know, Christina Brophy, Conant Brophy, and Dr. Akea de Barros Gomes. Wow. All those people have had their fingers in this pie of success.
Yeah. It feels like the, if that Hamilton story of like
Mike Dyer, who had been there for a long time, but
you get all these right people in the right room, and it's the energy is incredible, and it's really been a blessing to be a part of this team, because I feel like I've been able to contribute my skills and storytelling skills and photography skills on a much larger scale, and I feel like I can feel the needle moving a little bit about how people perceive the city and what they think about the museum. So it's exciting.
The museum has embraced, it's gone beyond the Yankee bubble.
Yeah.
It's embraced the Portuguese community, or let's call it the Luso community, which includes the Cape Verdean community as well, the Pan-Luso community, and so many incredible stories, and still more to come.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And the museum is realizing that while we are the story of whaling and New Bedford whaling and Yankee whaling, that this city in New Bedford has become the city it is today because of that. And so we're trying to be reflective of how the city has changed today and how it connects with its whaling history. So, yeah, we're trying to be a lot more inclusive. We strive to be the museum for all. We want everyone to be proud of this museum, regardless of if you have whaling ties or not, because there's so much more to New Bedford than just whaling. And a lot of it is happening because of that strong whaling history. So, yeah, we're looking to be a lot more inclusive. In that regard.
It obviously seems to be. I mean, there's a Portuguese committee, or as Gil Perry likes to call it, the Portuguese subcommittee, which is really wonderful. I mean, I've attended several programs there, and again, just scratched the surface. There's just so much more to be done. So, of all your accomplishments to date, what is there one that you would really like to be known for forever and ever?
Yeah, and I think the answer might surprise you, but I think the thing I want people to know about me that goes on forever is that I was a good dad to two boys. I think that's that's my stage of life right now. I've got a 2 and 4-year-old boy, and I value my work and I value the things I bring, but I want to just be a good dad, and I want to when I'm lowered into the ground, I want people to be like, he was a good dad.
yeah.
And that means a lot
pretty
to
good
me.
filmmaker.
Yeah. And it's fun because we're starting to include the kids in the films. So when we did the New Bedford 48 film, that our boys were involved in the films. And, we're telling fictional stories, which is fun, but I prefer the documentary work. So I'm excited to be able to include them in some things. And, like the story I think that I appreciate the most that I've been able to tell so far is the story of my grandfather. He grew up in Fall River. He was a very eccentric gentleman, and as he grew older, he became a lot more eccentric, and he created these birdhouses out of recycled plastic things. And I shot a short film on it. I just thought his story was so great, and it was so powerful. But I'm like, no one is going to tell this story, right? I have the skill set. I know the story's here. I felt incumbent to do it. I won an Emmy. I won an Emmy for that story. And then when he passed away, we named my son after my grandfather. And we showed him that film recently. And for me, I felt like that was a pivotal moment, that I felt like I captured a story that was meaningful. It was just a one person, right?
Right.
But that story will live with my son forever. And I'm hoping that a lot of these stories that we produce, people will still see for years to come.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that completely because Jeff and I, we started this off, and you have to have the elevator pitch because, if we started off as the artist profiles, and it was just around the time of the recession. I had been a marketing director for a large lumberyard for like 10 years, and then because we were the leading edge of the recession, it was a bloodbath, and bumped into Jeff, became, I consider him the son I never had, which is a great relationship. We started talking about this crazy idea because of Mary Jean Blasdale, of her putting an ad in a newspaper in '89, and for some reason I cut it out and I put it inside of this binder that I had of things I'd like to do someday. And I mentioned it to Jeff, and next thing you know, here we are. And the elevator pitch was, well, what is that? Well, we're tombstone makers. And, well, what's that mean? Well, there are artists who have come and gone in this city, and there's no tombstones for them. That was one of the pitches. The other one is we're pyramid builders. Well, pyramid builders? Yeah, but not in that grand sense. I mean, pyramids weren't built to preserve bodies. They were built to preserve memories, which was more important. And, even with my own mother, she's one of the father singers from the 50s and 60s. When I go, after she goes, and when I go, if I don't do something about it, her memory dies completely. It's the same thing with your grandfather, and I really, really believe that is an important thing. And Akea, Gomes, Dr. Gomes, really had something with the common ground stories because it's what makes us.
Yeah.
So, what's next on the horizon for you? Or you don't know? You're just going to open a door and you're going to step in something.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I'm in a place right now where I'm producing large quantities of high quality content, either through video or photo, and I'm like just loving that. I generally am so happy where I am right now. I miss creating content, and I miss telling those stories and being the agent of the person who captures these stories. So being able to do that now is great, and I think people are starting to pay attention to some of the things that we're creating. Mm-hmm. Even so, like, how did you do that? How are you making this? So it's kind of fun to be able to be that person who is doing that. The thing that also secretly excites me is that because I'm producing so much content, sometimes I have to appear in a clip or whatever, and people are recognizing my mustache everywhere I go.
I told you, you look like
you
look like my grand uncle. He married my mother's father's sister, Miguel Fonseca. And it's like, oh my God.
So it's funny. So people are like, hey, you're that guy on the internet who talks about whales. And I never thought these conversations would be happening. So I'm just loving life right now. But the thing that motivates me daily is my sons. And making sure that they are aware that we live in a great place in New Bedford, that the city's great, that they're capable of amazing things, and then just really nurturing their passions and kindling their interests.
So let me ask you a question. In your assessment, based on your experiences and so on and so forth, what makes a city great?
What makes a city great? That's my opinion is I think it's the people, because without people, it's just a collection of buildings. And I think a true sense of community comes from the people within it. The people who work together, who compromise, who collaborate to create things that just makes the community stronger and better. So in my opinion, I think it's the people. I love the people that are in our community. I love going downtown. I love going to the South End. I love going to the North End. I love exposing my boys to all the different cultures that a city has, and the cultures and the traditions that people have. So that would be my response. Is that I think that it's the people.
Yeah, and it's always been, well, it's a surprise to a lot of people, but the country is a country of immigrants, but the city, and New Bedford specifically, the South Coast, cities of immigrants, and everybody came in almost the same because of instability in their countries. It wasn't so much the American dream, but it was like they had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. And there's a story about this journalist, I believe. He had his apartment over a variety store in New Haven, very near the Yale campus, and he was amazed that this Korean family came in, and they opened this variety store that was open 24/7. Anything you wanted, they could get. It was one of those things. And there was one particular day where he went downstairs to get something because, you didn't have to walk too far. And there was a sign, handwritten sign taped to the door that said, "So sorry, closed. Go see son graduate from Yale." And that's when he realized that the immigrants come into the country or to an area or whatever, and specifically, why do they prosper, so many of them? Why do they prosper? And he came to the realization it's because they didn't know they were supposed to fail. And I think that's kind of a really great reframing, that they didn't know they were supposed to fail. Right now we have an influx of people coming in from Mesoamerica, South America, and the traditions are very parallel to the Luso communities, very, very similar. And it just makes it for a much more exciting place. So if you can reveal, what is your next big project?
My next big thing, next big project. Okay, I have this idea that I've been kicking around. I'm publicly telling you this for the first time. So right. I have this idea that I've been kicking around. Working at the museum has really inspired me. We have a great deal of collection of photographers and photography in the museum, from photographers like Norman Fortier. I don't know if there's is he a relation? Yeah. His work is incredible.
Yeah.
And then like James Reed. We have from Philip Mello or Peter Pereira. We have like these collections of beautiful images from people that they've shot. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking about creating like a photo blog or an Instagram carousel capturing men with mustaches in New England with the hope that someday, if I capture, 20 years worth of men with mustaches, that maybe it'll be a collection in a museum someday.
And that's what you would call it, men with mustaches?
I haven't really thought about it. I was thinking the stashes of New England. There's that People of New York blog, right, which I think is so fantastic. But I want to be able to talk to people and be like, what's your stash story? Because I feel like, maybe it's just me, but I notice these kind of things. And I'm like, and people are always like, when you look back at history, there's always these big collection of mustaches.
Right.
But I was also wondering, the mustaches never left, and people were like, "Why are they trendy?" I'm like, "You're just seeing them now." It's just
right.
But if we could capture a moment with people and their connection with mustaches, that's something I've been kicking around. Like a photo blog, video reel kind of thing, like short documentary style, like interviews. So.
And then do one of those, I think Michael Jackson, this was even before apps, where the morphing, where you just take the whole thing and just morph it from one into another. It's just absolutely phenomenal.
I think it could be cool because I feel like everyone has a story. You know, I genuinely believe that everyone has a story to tell, right? And I think we got to capture those stories. And everyone has a mustache story. And like, you know, why do people have mustaches and where does that connect to? And, you know, we're making that conscious decision to wear this large thing on our face. And why?
Oh yeah. I mean, up until, well, actually the last vestiges of my beard, when I married my wife, Paul, 7 years ago, I had I guess what's referred to as the soul patch. I don't even know what it's called in English. My mother always called it the pear, you know, on the bottom of my chin, and then that is totally gone. But I had a full beard since I got out of graduate school, and simply because babyface. Nobody took me seriously.
That's partly why I grew my mustache.
Yeah,
my dad had a mustache, my grandfather had a mustache, so like I had a long lineage of people with mustaches, but I was like, I wanted to be taken seriously. You know, when I started at Channel 10, I was 19 years old. I was one of the youngest people ever hired at that time. Mm-hmm. I was just unheard of to be so young working in this industry. So I grew a mustache with the hope that people would take me seriously. So it's that's funny. That's like a real thing.
Yeah, and then it was for a while a tradition around here, and I know my brother up in Maine, the tradition still holds that you grew out your beard during the wintertime. Because, boy, I don't know if you've ever had to shave. Well, I was forced to shave once in that 40-year span of time or more. Because of, I'm not even going to get into it, but I was forced to shave because it was an employment thing. I was forced to shave. And going out, it was November, it was Thanksgiving. And going outside, it was like, oh my God! It's like either a gallon aftershave kind of feeling or somebody just sprayed you with ice, you know?
Yeah.
And there is also, I don't know, there was this kind of a protective thing. There's just so many and then, of course, you have to groom it.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, for me, it was 2007, 2006, Bruins World Stanley Cup playoffs. Mm-hmm. All my friends were growing off playoff beards. I wanted to fit in. I was like, I can't grow a beard, so I'm going to grow a mustache. And then around the same time, my mother hated it.
Yeah.
She hated it.
Yeah, mine too.
And that just inspired me to keep it.
It was mine too.
So I felt like I was doing something right by getting a visceral reaction from my mother.
Yeah, and there is an entire history behind it for sure. I mean, some of the mustaches were like absolutely elaborate. The ones that connected to the mutton chops, and then you know we got photographs of on both sides of the family, the French Canadians and the Portuguese, and it was just what guys did, I guess, you know. But it would be really interesting to see, especially across ethnic lines, especially, you know, we think that we're unique or we think that we're pretty much part of the big mixing pot. But it's interesting. Well, you know, between New Bedford and Fall River, I think there's like 15 miles between the city centers. And it's like another world.
Yeah.
I had part of my life that was very, very involved in Fall River. I had to speak Fall River.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the chorizo sandwich
Billy's,
episode.
Billy's Cafe,
which is totally different from anything over here. And even with hot dogs, we had a client. We had a client that opened up a chain of hot dog places called Bow Wowzers, and my father used to call me the hot dog kid because he said, no matter what time of day, I'd ask you if you're hungry. Yes, what do you want to eat? Hot dog. So I forced myself to go and check every hot dog Fall River in New Bedford and stuff.
And we have strong opinions.
Oh yeah,
we have incredibly strong opinions. I grew up in Fall River, so I know what it's like to be like, hey, we're loyal to a certain hot dog place. We don't go anywhere else.
Oh my God, King Philip's, that's like this a dynasty. I don't even know if they're still open.
Yeah.
But one of the things is funny that we got to this point, because we still have a little bit more time. And since you're a documentarian,
Yeah.
I would love to be able to delve into mill food.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the mill food in New Bedford, except for the fact that my father, when he was working for Berkshire Hathaway as a trainee instructor, the Cotton Division, going to the Mount Piu, and the only mill food that I remember was the pork pies. You'd walk in there, and it would be like a pyramid of pork pies.
Well,
But you've got the Whoopi burger, you've got melted cheese sandwiches, you've got the Coney dogs, and I know I'm missing a slew of course, there's the original pork pies from the city of Mills Hills and Churches, and pork pies. And I'm just mesmerized by the history of these foods.
yeah. I think it would be a great story. That's something I never really thought too much about.
Of course, there's a chow mein sandwich.
Well,
and I
right,
knew the Wong
right,
family.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you're in Fall River, the chow mein sandwich is king for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing too is putting vinegar. Like still to this day, if I go get Chinese food and I'll ask for vinegar, I'm having a chow mein sandwich or just chow mein, they're sort of like, "You want vinegar?" Yes, please. In Fall River, you don't even ask.
Yeah,
They bring it
it's
there because
so
that's the
funny.
blend of the British and the Chinese together, which is
Yeah.
so cool, right?
Yeah, it's funny, and we live in New Bedford now, and while New Bedford has some great food, I do miss some of the Fall River eats. Especially the sandwich shops like the Marzilli sandwich or Marcucci's, and how people there's like turf wars over those two sandwich chains. So
Yeah.
I do miss those little.
And then the Sam's
Cool
for the
things.
kebabs on
Oh
Martine
yeah,
Street.
of course, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, people would ask me
The
from
meat
out of
pies,
town.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then, let's go to George's. I mean, again, and it has a culinary history that's so different from New Bedford. When I was working a lot in Fall River, people from out of town would say, where's a good place to eat? And I would say, well, do you like Chinese, Portuguese, or Lebanese? And they'd stare, what?
Yeah.
I said, Portuguese, Chinese, or Lebanese. Those are your choices, right?
Yeah, I know. It is really funny.
Yeah.
But now when people come to the museum, they're like, "Where do I go to eat?" I'm like, "Well, do you like burritos? Do you like seafood? Do you like Portuguese food?" It's a different flavor for sure.
Yeah.
But I do miss those little hole in the wall sandwich shops for sure.
Yeah, and my sister-in-law, when she visited from Detroit, the Whaling Museum is always on her list. I mean, it's one of her favorite places. And I told her about the expansion. She says, "Oh, I just wish they would put up whatever you would want to call them, like a B&B or something where you could hang," because she does research, and a coffee shop or a place like that. Because I remember, in Lisbon at the Gulbenkian, my God, their cafe was unbelievable. It was like their cafe was as good as any restaurant in town here. Of course, Portuguese are very, very serious about their
Of course,
food.
right.
But yeah, I would love to be able to do something like that. In fact, now that I'm thinking, that would be a great exhibit to write a grant for. But more of that later. Anyway, so let's see how much time we got left. Okay, we can wrap this up. What's next? I mean, right now next.
Yeah, we just did the 40-hour film. That's screening next
Yeah.
week, which will be fun.
And it's going to beat the pants off you.
Oh yeah, I'm honestly so excited to see his film. I'm like, I don't think we're in the same. He changed his team name, so I actually don't know what
Right.
the team name is. So he could be in our same group, but it'll be fun. I think in the short term right now, I got a bunch of projects kicking around for the New Bedford Whaling Museum. Mm-hmm. We just installed designed some window clings for the museum. So on the backside of Water Street, there's these large 8-foot vinyl graphics that we designed, which I'm really excited about, and I think it'll bring some life to Water Street. And we're just looking for more opportunities to tell stories. We have new exhibitions opening up this summer. The Wider World in Scrimshaw, which looks at our collections
Wow, yeah.
of indigenous collections from the Pacific and Arctic and how it connected with the New Bedford whalers. We have contemporary artist Courtney M. Leonard at the museum in her exhibition Breach.
That's upstairs?
That's upstairs in the Center Street Gallery. Breach, Logbook 24, Scrimshaw. So I'm hoping to spend a lot of time this summer to tell the stories of those exhibitions and those artifacts, and then of the artists. I'm really looking forward to that in the short term.
Yeah, and there's more coming too. Because
There's more coming, yeah. And in the fall, this is a really exciting story I'm looking forward to tell. And I've been producing this documentary style, content, because it's going to be ultimately a short form content on the website, social media. But I've been following artist Katie Rodden Walker, who's going to be opening an exhibition in November at the Whaling Museum, Community Blooms. And essentially what she's been doing is she's been taking plastic, single-use plastic from beach cleanups, from her home, from the community, and people have been creating these jellyfish and these like life-size recycled jellyfish, and she's going to be hanging them all up in the Center Street Gallery. So the whole place is just going to turn into this like jellyfish terrarium.
So much so that you're just waiting for SpongeBob and Patrick to show up.
Yeah, but it's going to be really powerful because it's all recycled plastic that could have been in the ocean. And so I've been capturing a lot of fantastic moments with her over the past year, and like that's the thing that like working at a museum has really things that I don't. So when I worked in TV news, I would arrive to a scene, I'd shoot something, and then 5 minutes later it's on TV, and then we never talk about it again. And when I was at the school, we could film something for a week or two, a month or two, but at the museum, I'm capturing something across an entire year, and no one has seen it yet so there's like this I'm getting anxious. I'm like, I want to get this thing out there, but I know that like it's for a much bigger purpose. So.
One final question: you also produce posters as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I've taken a kind of a back seat from poster making, but yeah, I did make a series of 11 by 17 retro styled, like WPA styled posters of this area.
Oh, speaking of WPA, you and I are going to have to talk about the Fall River Art Association and the WPA collection that's just sort of sitting there, because that could open up a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know they had that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I one of the things when I worked in news, I would go to places and I'd meet people like from Boston and New York or New Hampshire, wherever I was, I'd be meeting people and they'd be like, "You're from New Bedford, you're from Fall River." Ugh, gross. So I just wanted to prove people wrong. So I created this like poster series of Fall River, New Bedford, Dartmouth, these places, Westport, these places that people don't want to visit or don't know about, to try to just create some form of positivity about the areas.
I mean, I've been up in Danvers, Lynn, other places up towards there, and I say to myself, why are these people looking down on us? I mean, yuck.
Yeah,
I would hate to live in these places.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, okay, I'm not seeing the whole city, but where I am right now is, but, part of our biggest problem that we always had, and we're running out of time, I don't want to go into that diatribe, but then what they used to refer to as the 195 corridor.
Right.
Where that's the only shot of the city that you have. And you look on both sides and you're like, ew, I hope the car doesn't break down.
Yeah, right.
Because you're on your way to the Cape.
Right.
So we were a pass-through, kind of thing. But wow, has this changed dramatically. It has changed dramatically. Okay, any final words of wisdom?
No, the only wisdom I have is just my debt of gratitude for this conversation and allowing me to talk about stories. And I'm really appreciative of the stories that you've been collecting. It's been wonderful to hear, and thank you for being patient with me. And I know I'm hard to reach sometimes.
We're all busy. We're all busy. As long as we're productive, that's my father used to say, everybody is busy, but being productive is another thing. And also, too, this has also been a great chance for us to connect because it's always on the fly. And you're always busy or attending a function. We just can't start chatting while the guy's doing a presentation or the person's doing a presentation. So with that in mind, folks, thanks so much for joining us again with our guest, Drew Furtado, who is a filmmaker, documentarian, and a bunch of other things. And what is your title again?
I'm the Communications Marketing Manager.
Communications Marketing Manager from the New Bedford Whaling Museum. And with that in mind, thanks so much. Once again, be nice to each other out there and be kind to yourself. Thank you. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.